Hey guys, this is Tech Howdy. I welcome you to another video tutorial where we are building this CMS application using ASP.NET Core 3 and Angular 10. In the last video tutorial, we finished working on the generate new token method for our Angular login implementation in the Angular application. Here we will be generating a new token for the user if they are logging in for the first time, which means they will provide us their password and we will use that password to generate a new token. But in an event where the user is already logged in and they want to refresh their existing authentication token because their authentication token is expired, whereas their refresh token is still valid, so we will go ahead and validate that expired authentication token and then refresh the authentication token. Therefore, we need a refresh token method over here, which we will use to add this logic in our application authentication process. After we have created the generate new token method, here we had added the refresh token method. Inside the refresh token method, I have implemented some logic. First thing that I always do is put a try catch block where I can catch any exceptions and log them in the log file. In an event I catch any exceptions, I return a error response. In an event where the app settings or any process during this try catch try block fails, which means we could not validate the user, we will return a error response once again with the HTTP status code as unauthorized, which is 401. Now in the logic of this try block, first thing that we want to check is if the user or the admin has set this particular value, which is allow site-wide token refresh, to true. So in the app settings, if this value is set to true, which means the application owner or the admin wants the token refreshing feature to be implemented in their CMS application. If this value is set to false, means that the token refreshing feature is set to false and we should not be refreshing any user tokens. If a JWT token is expired, then we should be not refreshing it, instead asking the user to log in once again in the application with their username and password. Since in this particular instance, if the if condition check passes, which means that the allow site-wide token refresh is set to true, we jump on to the first step over here, which is to validate our JWT token. Now, you must be wondering, why are we validating the JWT token if the JWT token is expired and we are going to create a refresh token? It's always necessary to validate an expired token. We don't know what this expired token contains. We don't know if this expired token was issued by our website. We also don't know who has signed this token. Therefore, we should always validate an expired token before we refresh the expired token. That's because if some user forgets to log out from the application and somebody else accesses the browser of that user, they can steal the cookies or they can uh, do a CSRF attack, or any kind of script can access that cookie, we don't know. And if they are successful in stealing that authentication cookie, they can go ahead and send it to the server along with the refresh token, which might not be expired. In that event, if we are not validating the expired token, we would directly refresh it without even validating, and the hacker will be successful in logging into the user's account with an expired token. Therefore, it's always good to validate the expired token and to validate its authenticity to make sure that it was issued by our website and the request is coming in from our website. So we'll validate all these parameters in this particular validate or token async method. I've created an extension method since I don't want to make this method lengthy, and also I can use this validate or token method in other methods if I need to. So here I'm waiting for the result of this validate or token method. This token method validation will return a response object we have created a generic response object which returns a Boolean flag which is valid, a message associated with the response, and some data if the response has any data. Now here in the auth service, I will explain to you what happens here in this method. Then we will start working on the logic of this validate or token method. Since we are going to receive the method response, which is response object, first thing we are checking if the isValid parameter is true and if the message is equal to token expired. Now if the message is equal to token expired, means the token was expired. So let's go ahead and validate some further checks. This response which we are receiving, which is token expired, which also means that we were able to decrypt the expired token and we were able to validate it, and we were also able to know that the token was expired. Therefore, we can now go ahead and check if the expired token, the user information in the expired token, we will get the username from that expired token, and we will see if we have a user in our database with that username. So we will use the find by name async method of our user manager to find out if we have a user with that username. Next, we will check if we have not found anything, that means the user is null, or we received a user but the user role is administrator. As mentioned in the previous video tutorial, I don't want the administrator role users to log in from the client app. Therefore, I have added this additional condition. If you want administrator users to also log in using their login credentials from your Angular client app, then you can remove this condition. But I recommend you keep it because you don't want the admin to log in from the client app and for some reason the cookie is not deleted or something in the browser and the admin panel can be accessed by the hacker, then you don't want any security flaw. So I will make sure that if the user role is set to administrator, then then I will return a error response of unauthorized. Now we found a user. So next thing, we want to get the refresh tokens associated with that user from the refresh token table. While getting that refresh token for that particular user from the refresh token table, I'm going to check if the token's client ID matches the client ID and if the user ID of that user matches the user ID of this user. So if you look at the generate new token method, here we had called the create access token method to create an access token, and inside the create access token method, when we created the new refresh token, here we had set the client ID for that refresh token. So we are checking if this particular client ID matches the client ID of our app settings file, and if it matches, then we will go ahead. If it does not, we received a null response. We could not find any result. We return unauthorized. But if we found a result, we could match all the parameters. Then we will go ahead and check if that token is expired. Before refreshing the JWT token, we need to check if the refresh token is valid. So we are checking if the refresh token is expired. Then we will delete all the cookies associated with authentication from our browser, and then we will return an unauthorized response. But if the refresh token is valid, then we had set some layers of encryption on the refresh token. We will go ahead and decrypt that refresh token. We had two layers of encryption. If you watch the previous tutorial, I have explained it in that video tutorial. We had two layers of protection, so we are going to decrypt that token. We had also created a encryption key using the GUID of a GUID class, and we had saved it in the refresh token table. So we will go ahead and do the decryption over here, and then after we have successfully decrypted the token, we will go ahead and create a new access token. We have an extension method for that. That's the same method that we were talking about a few minutes ago. So we will create the new refresh token with this method. Here, if the decryption was not successful, then we will do an unauthorized request, which means that somebody must have played around with the refresh token, tried to modify it, or the refresh token is expired. We have already done that check. So if any of these reasons we could not decrypt it, we are going to return an unauthorized response. Now, the next thing after we have created the access token, since all our checks have passed, we have to set the cookie in the user's browser. We have done that in this particular steps over here, and we have also added the principal to our access token, and then finally we return the access token. We have got the access token now, which we have returned back from this particular refresh token call. Now we have to work on the validate auth async method because our refresh token creation depends on this step 1, which is we need to validate our expired JWT token in order to create a refresh token. So now we will go ahead and implement this logic so that we can validate the expired JWT token, and we can send this response to our refresh token before it creates any refresh token. So guys, here I have implemented the validate auth token async method, which returns a response object asynchronously. And in this method, first thing, I have created a response object which will be my response returned to the refresh token method. Here in the try catch block, the first thing, if there are any exceptions, we are going to catch them, but we have some additional checks to do before we log the exceptions. Therefore, let's start from the try block over here, where first I'm going to get the access token and the username cookie from the browser cookie using our cookie service, and the get method will help us do that. All we have to do is provide the name of the cookie. We have already implemented this cookie service. We have created 2 variables that will store this value. Next thing that we want to check if the values that we received, it's not null or empty. If it is not null or empty, then we will go ahead with further validation. If it is null or empty, then we are going to return a response object where we will set the isValid property to false, the message as token invalid, and the response will be returned back to refresh token method, in this case where the refresh token method is calling this validate auth token async method. Now if we have received a cookie which is not null or empty, then we will go ahead and get the user from our database. The username that we store is not encrypted, therefore we can directly pass it to this user manager find by name async method and try to find out if we have any users with that username in our database. If our user result is not null, then we will go ahead and then we will try to get the old tokens associated with that user using that user's user ID. Now, if we have received any old user tokens, which means our result is not null, then we will try to decrypt that token that we received in the cookie using the protector instance of the I data protection service that we have, and we will unprotect our cookie that we received. So as you know, we have 2 layers of protection, so we will encrypt this particular cookie, decrypt this particular cookie in 2 layers. And once we have the decryption done, then we are going to create and validate our cookie using the security handler from JWT. Here we are first going to create some validation parameters. We need to validate this decrypted cookie to make sure that it's a JWT token, it's a valid JWT token. When I say valid, I already know that the token is expired, or I already know that we are using a JWT token functionality in our application. Therefore, I am going to create JWT token validation parameters that I have used while I created this token. So in these parameters, what am I doing? I'm specifying that do I need to validate the sign-in key, do I need to validate the issuer, do I need to validate the audience, and so on. Here I'm also specifying, do I need to validate the lifetime of the token, and I've set it to true. Next thing, I have set up my validation parameters. Now I have to use these validation parameters to validate my token. I have a validate token variable over here, which I am using, and using the handler which I created here. This handler I am going to call the validate token method. Our JWT security handler class has a method called as validate token, which we can use to easily validate if the token is valid or it's invalid. All we have to do is pass the token as the first parameter, make sure that the token is first decrypted so that it can validate it. Second, the validation parameters, which in our case is the parameters that we created. And finally, I have the result out over here and stored in this variable called as security token. When I am passing this decrypted token, I'm not passing the decrypted JWT token. I'm passing the decrypted token that I have encrypted. So we have our own layer of encryption on top of the encryption that is done by JWT. So I have decrypted my layer using the decryption key that we have stored in our database. I have not decrypted the JWT token. I've just decrypted the layer which we had encrypted. Now the JWT token handler has the responsibility to decrypt the JWT token, and using these parameters and specify in the output that the token is valid or not valid. Here this security token will have that particular uh, value stored in it. Here if this validation passes, then we can go ahead with further checks. If the validation fails, there can be multiple reasons why this validation failed. If the validation failed because the token was expired, then the validate token method will throw a exception, and we will catch that exception in this catch block. If the validate token failed because the token was invalid, then the validate token method will not throw an exception, but here we can then validate the token further based on our requirements. So we will go ahead and validate the token using some additional condition. First, we will check if the security token that we have validated with this validate token method, is it a type of JWT security token? If this condition passed, then we have another condition over here which will check if the security algorithms that was used to create that specific token was the security algorithm that we have used. So if we go back to the generate new token method, as you know, it calls the create access token method. Here in the create access token method, we have some validation parameters over here. We have described the token before creating it, how and what values we want to use to create the token. Here if you notice, there is a security algorithm that we use for the sign-in credentials. For the signing credentials, if you look at this algorithm, it says security algorithm dot 256 signature, bit signature, 256 bit signature. So we are trying to match if this signature matches the token that we have just validated using the validate token method. So if the signature matches and if the token is of type JWT security token, then we can go further with the process of validation. If it does not and it fails, then we will create a response object. We will set the isValid parameter to false. The message as token is invalid. Now this check passed, so we will jump on to the next if block, which says if the user role contains any of the user roles that we have specified in this user role array that we have created while we were validating the admin authentication. Here we have added some user roles, which are basically the roles that we have in our application. So I'm adding this additional check over here to also check if the user roles that the user contains is one of the user roles that we have in that particular array. Next, if this validation passes, then I'm going to decrypt the username, the decrypted username that we get from the validated token, a JWT token. When we created this token, we also added a username to the claims of the token. So that means the token contains the username. Now, what we are trying to do over here is we are trying to check if this username that we have within this token matches the username that we have received from the cookie, the browser cookie. And if it matches, then we will create a response which is valid. We will set it to true. Message, we will set it as token valid, and then we will return the response because all our checks have now passed. Now let's go back to this step over here where I told you that if the validation token failed because the token was expired or there was some other reasons, then the validate token method will throw an exception. It will not go to this next if block. It will directly throw an exception if the token is not valid for some reasons where it could not decrypt it, for some reasons where the token was expired, and so on. So if it's not valid, it jumps to this catch block here where we catch the exception. Now we will get the type of exception that was thrown. If the type of exception is security token expired exception, which means that the exception was thrown because the token was expired, then we will check if the allow site-wide token refresh flag is set to true. We will check that flag again because here our main aim is if the token is valid but it's only throwing an exception because the token is expired, then we can refresh it. But if it's throwing an exception for some other reason other than token expired, then we are not going to refresh the token. So we want to make sure that the token is valid and it is expired, then we will go ahead and create it. When I say token is valid, means that the token was created from our application and not some third-party source. But even though the token was created from our application, it is still expired and we need to refresh it. So we have this exception block over here. Here we will once again check if the admin user has set the token refreshing in the website to true, then we will go ahead and validate the lifetime of the token. We will set that parameter to false, and then we will validate the token once again because we had set this parameter to true in this particular check. Now we will go ahead and change this parameter to false, and then we will once again check the token using the validate token method. Once again, we will go through the remaining checks that we did in the previous stage because due to the exception thrown of the token expiry, the code directly jumped to the exception block. So while we called this method, we could not process these particular conditions. Directly the code jumped to this exception block, and therefore we have to once again validate these steps. So that's what I have done over here. I'm checking if the security algorithm and the token type matches, and if it does, then I will set the token as expired and the valid to true, and if it does not, then I will set it to token invalid. Now we will return the response back to the refresh token method as we created it, and here in the response we are checking if the message is set to token expired because this is the message we set when the token is valid and expired in our case. In the exception block, this is the message that we return. So if this condition is succeeded, then we will go ahead and refresh the token, and I have explained it to you what happens next after the result is received. So now we have successfully implemented the functionality within the ASP.NET Core app for the creating of tokens and refreshing tokens. Now we have to consume this method in the controller class or the controller API that we have created, and that's located in the controller folder version 1 of our API. Here we have the login method or the auth method. Here we need to further implement our logic because now we will receive a token response model, which we need to further validate over here. So here inside the uh, auth method of the account controller, once we have received a token response from the auth service.auth method, we are going to validate that response. We are going to check if the response info.statuscode is unauthorized. Then we will delete all the cookies because the user is not authenticated to access the protected area of our application. So therefore we need to delete all existing cookies from the browser. Here in the auth service, I have created two extension methods: delete all cookies, where I need to pass a array of cookies that I want to delete, and I have a delete cookie method as well, where I can delete a single cookie. Have added these methods to the auth service interface. Here you might be thinking that I could have just used the cookie service. I did not want to create a cookie service instantiation here. I just wanted to use what I have implemented, and therefore I used the extension method in the auth service, which will directly call the cookie service and the function from the cookie service. But if you want to add the additional service, you don't have to create these two methods. You can directly in the account controller instantiate your cookie service and call those methods directly. It's up to you how you want to implement it. So now here we are checking for the status code, and depending on the status code that was returned from this method call, we will return the response accordingly. For status code, uh, if it's unauthorized, we do the following. If it's bad request, we do the following. And if it's internal server error, we do the following. So in all cases, basically, we are trying to uh, clear the browser cookie. So that's what I have done over here. Finally, if the status code is okay, then we return okay. And the two-factor login, if it's set to false, then we will return okay. And if the two-factor login property is set to true, then we will have to implement two-factor authentication in our process of authentication for the user. But that will be in another video tutorial. I don't want to mix the login and two-factor authentication at the same time. I will create a separate video tutorial just for two-factor authentication. I've shown you in the video demo, on the extended demo, how we have implemented and how we have used the two-factor authentication and how we use the code for logging into the account. But that will be in a separate video tutorial. So for now, two-factor login, if it's set to false, we return OK. And if there's an exception, we log it, or else we return unauthorized. So we have these auth method now implemented. Now we can go ahead to our Angular app and start creating the methods that we need, and we will start consuming this API that we created in the account controller to authenticate the user. So let's go back to our Angular app now and start working on it and start using this auth method. So in the next video tutorial, we will start working on the login from the Angular app. If you have any questions, use the comment section, and for the code, it will be provided in the DevOps repo. You can find the link in the video description. Do not forget to like and subscribe our channel Tech Howdy. Thank you once again.